Imagine knowing exactly how a medication will work for you before you even take it. Today, we are discussing how pharmacogenetic testing is making that possible and changing lives in the process. Welcome to WellWaveNOW, your portal for actionable wellness insights. Meet your health empowerment team. There's Breck, the healthcare disruptor, decoder of medication complexities, and a community and integrative wellness expert. Dr. Bob Levine, renowned brain researcher and national leader in drug-free pain elimination. And I'm Tim Daniels, your wellness plan manager, builder of personalized wellness approaches as unique as you are, with an expertise in pulsed electromagnetic field therapy. Together, we are your wellness catalysts, committed to elevating your health, enhancing your functionality, and optimizing your performance at every life stage. WellWaveNOW, where timeless wisdom lights your wellness path. Today, we are diving into the world of pharmacogenetic testing, a cutting-edge tool that personalizes medication plans based on genetic profiles. Our very own Breck, with over 20 years of helping pharmacies deliver the right solution for those in need of medication, will lead us through the benefits, challenges, and practicalities of pharmacogenetic testing. One of Breck's initiatives as chairman of BRIM Health focuses on increasing testing adoption and access and ensuring more patients benefit from tailored, safe, and effective medication regimens. So welcome to you, Breck, in an official capacity this time. And, this as I think about this pharmacogenetic testing, I think we need a little foundational understanding. I recall, one of my alma maters, Stanford, putting things out years ago saying that the future was testing and tailoring drugs and customizing drugs for people. So that's been coming for a while, but it's kind of here now. And it's, as we talked about, it's a game changer in healthcare. But I think still many people are unfamiliar with it. So I would love for you to just start with that foundation. What is pharmacogenetic testing and how it's used to personalize that medicine?
Yeah, no, thanks. Thanks for having me on the show.
Thank Dr. Bob, because I said, no, we're not going to have Breck. And Bob said, we got to have Breck.
This is great.
Before you get started, Breck, I just want to say this topic is so important. I'm so happy that there's a lot of people here. It's so important. Go.
Yeah, no, this is great topic, something that I believe very much in, and it's super easy to do, right? So it's not like even having to go get a bunch of blood drawn or anything. So pharmacogenetic genomics or pharmacogenetic testing is simply that. It's a genetic test. It is a swab on the inside of your mouth, similar to, if you've ever had your ancestry DNA done before, only this is even easier than that. I remember when my family, we all got those one Christmas to check all of our ancestry, and the instructions were that you had to have not eaten anything for at least a half hour. Well, this was during the holidays. You're eating every 15 minutes, right? We're like, how can we possibly stop eating long enough to take these tests? And then you had to fill up the tube by spitting in it. Well, my poor mother-in-law, she was a little dehydrated evidently, and it just took her forever. She couldn't get enough in that tube. This is even easier than that, folks. You just simply swab the inside of your cheek and then send it off to one of our labs. But yeah, so in pharmacy, we just call it a PGX test. So that's the abbreviation for pharmacogenetic testing is just PGX. And it helps us identify the genetic makeup of the individual patient. So even if a patient is on the right medication, and let's talk about that for a minute. And I want your input on this, Dr. Bob, because you spent 20 years researching this, right? A lot longer than me. But even when somebody is on the right medication, their metabolism might be faster than everyone that was in the drug study, right? Or slower. And so it could be the right medication, it's just not the right dosing sometimes.
Yeah, the word is bioavailability, really. And so if a drug has to be metabolized, which means has to be converted from compound A to compound B, right? That has to happen for the drug to be active. And so there's several steps. It could be the rate of conversion is fast or slow. It could be also that the drug that's converted to has a limiting effect in certain people. There's always like a kind of a bell curve where the drug is pretty good in the middle for a lot of people, but on the fringes, it's way different. And so it could lead to toxicity, could lead to inactivity and frustration. So bioavailability, how bioavailable is a drug actually?
Yeah, yeah, and how your genetic makeup is metabolizing that medication, if it's the right medication, right? So what PGX or pharmacogenomics is helping us do is identify and simply laying it out which medications work with which patients. So it's kind of the stoplight approach, Tim. Imagine, all the medications in green are the ones that work for that patient. Medications in yellow, those are ones proceed with caution, just like coming to an intersection, right? And then the medications in red are the medications that you should steer clear of for that particular patient's genetic makeup. The other cool thing these reports do is tell us which drugs don't interact or play well with the other medication. And so when we start to talk about geriatric care, which, Tim, you have a vast experience in that area, what's the average home care patient number of medications they're on?
It's a
So I
lot.
see 10 from Bob.
Bob's saying 10. I don't recall completely. I do recall that in general, I think for people over 50 in general in the population, I believe they were on 5 to 7 medications.
5 to 7, yeah. We had one poor lady on 35 different medications. She was literally a walking zombie, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Just too many medications. And what happens is, I think the first one or two are really actually treating a symptom, right? But then medication 3 and 4 is now counteracting a negative side effect from medication 1 and 2, and then it kind of becomes a daisy chain from there.
And so on. That's right.
Yeah. Now let's talk about the efficacy of medications when they are made, right? So the manufacturer makes a medication, and man, it's going to be a blockbuster drug that's going to solve all the world's problems for whatever, the potential uh, element is, right? But what is the efficacy for the standard population, even in their trials, without introducing any other medication? So just on that medication and doing a trial, you're still only have about 30 to 50% of the patients that are actually getting all of the intended benefits. Okay. So think about that for a minute. That makes that somewhere between 50 and 70% of the patients in that trial aren't getting any of the intended benefit. That's the same with medications on the market today, right?
Dr. Bob has a question for you on that one for you.
It's a comment because I love the fact that you brought up that there's multiple medications taken by the population, and what Tim said about 5 to 7 is really a great fact to know, because as soon as you go from taking one pharmaceutical to taking 2 or more, you've lost all evidence basis for the use of drug number 1 in the condition, because the drug company's not testing drug 1 and 2 or drug 1, 2 plus 3 or 1, 2 plus 10. They're not testing that. So people want to realize that they're like guinea pigs when they get one pharmaceutical and then they get prescribed another and another and another. It's like, hey, good luck. I hope it works for you, all that stuff.
Yeah, I think that's why they call it the practice of medicine, right?
I can say I got to keep you two right down the line now. People have
you don't want us to get kicked off of YouTube.
Yeah. Don't want you getting off into the fringe element here. Even though mainstream is not a good word these days, we're a mainstream program here.
Well, nobody can refute what I said about when you go from drug 1 to drug 2. There's no more evidence basis. That's irrefutable.
Yeah. And that's the same with the efficacy in those drug trials, right? You can look up any drug trial and see what the standard deviation is, and which, and that's why it's so funny to look at the sugar pills, right? And that placebo effect. But Dr. Bob, you have a little bit of experience with that. What's the efficacy of just having a sugar pill?
Well, it depends on
not efficacy, but the perceived efficacy.
No, it actually is efficacy.
It is efficacy.
Okay. It is because the data shows that to be an effective placebo, it has to produce exactly what the drug produces. Because if it doesn't, then it's not placebo. So what's really interesting in migraine headaches, for instance, the placebo effect is around 30 to 40%. There was a study done with kids using antidepressant medication, and the placebo effect was about 70%, which is what are you testing? I mean, wow. And then the drug effect was about 80%. So a 10% difference. But if you test enough people, you get statistical significance, and then you have $1 billion drug. So that's kind of how it works, unfortunately. And I always say, I'd love to see physicians using their smarts and understanding that placebo is causing exactly the benefit, which means placebo simply means, I have the intention of getting better with that, whatever it is. I have the intention that that's going to help me. That's what placebo is, a belief. It's a belief, and it's a great belief. I think everybody should have it, right?
Right.
So the physicians would actually tell people, hey, we got placebo, which has zero side effects, and we have a drug which has certain side effects. And we know from listening to the pharmaceutical ads on TV that you can really be in trouble with the side effects, right? Including death. And so you can either try, but the drug is 10% more effective. And it's the same in migraine studies, 30% placebo, 40% benefit with the drug. So you can take that extra 10% and risk some of the side effects, which are not that prevalent in people, but they're there. Or you can try the placebo first and see how it works for you. If it doesn't work for you, then you can go to the drug. Nobody ever says that. I wish
Right.
I wish they would.
Right. But the other thing along those lines, even if they're giving them the medication, this is where I thought you were heading for a while there, Bob, but I can't predict where you head anymore. You're the free willing spirit, is that even when they're giving them that medication, not the placebo, if they tell that patient, there's been shown, there's been a couple of studies, if they will articulate to that patient, this is going to work for you, it has a higher degree of working for them on that.
Absolutely. Perfect. Thank you, Tim. I just I didn't bring that up, and I'm so glad you did, because it's having the intention, right? It's having the intention. And if physicians would talk like that, it would be really fantastic.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Now,
that goes back to a lot of
Breck,
what you offer too, Bob, right? Is making sure people are future visioning of what their outcome needs to be. That's training your brain to do exactly what the placebo is doing.
Yeah, that's how the placebo is working, actually,
Yep.
I think, in my opinion. I don't have any data for that, but in my view, the mind is the controller of the electrochemical machinery in the body that's getting the job done. So when the mind directs the brain goes out and does it. And that's how the placebo works. As long as the person's not blocking that effect by saying nothing really works for me. I've tried just about everything. I'll give this a try. I don't think it's going to do anything. Well, guess what? It's not going to do anything.
Yeah. Self-fulfilling prophecy.
right.
Yeah.
But Breck, now this pharmacogenetic testing, though, isn't that meant to eliminate some of those medications that aren't working for people?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Problem is they're quite expensive, or they used to be quite expensive to get these comprehensive tests done.
Mhm.
And so not every insurance covers it. Now, in Medicare, though, with your 65 and older, they will cover this because that's the patient population that's on the most medications. So Medicare has wised up and said, hey, this is probably a good idea that we cover this. There's still even some guidelines there, right? There's you have to be on either a heart medication or a psych medication. And then
Well, that's easy. That's easy to accomplish.
Right. Very easy, especially at 60, 70, 80 years old. You're probably on some kind of a heart medication.
or a psych med too.
Or a psych. Yes, which I've been told that you inherit that. Actually, it's inherited. It's from your children, right? You 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 need to be on a psych med because you've had children. But yeah, that's they're coming down in price. They used to be about $1,000 if you had to cash pay for this. If you're if you're with a private payer. But they're coming down. We can get those comprehensive tests done for about $350 now. And the beautiful thing is you only have to do it once, right? Your DNA doesn't change. It's for you for your whole existence. So it's only a one and done. You only need to get that DNA test done one time.
Good. So you look at that now, you say the accessibility and price is coming down, but what other ways aren't your BRIM Health work? What is that doing to and you might want to share a little bit more what that is, a little bit more. Share some of what it is, because I just kind of called it out by name. What is BRIM? What is BRIM Health? And as part of that, what are you doing to try and make this pharmacogenetic testing more accessible to people?
Yeah, so I would go back to looking at where's the best place to go to get information about medications if you have a question about medication. So you're not ready to pull the trigger and see if you're either eligible through your insurance or to pay out of pocket, $350 for this test. I would always recommend that you still have a conversation with your pharmacist. So PharmDs have had between 4 and 6 years of pharmacology. They really understand the science of medications and their interactions and dosing. I mean, they are super smart people. And not to take away from our MDs, our medical doctors are great. They're highly trained. They went to school for twice as long, 3 times as long. However, they only had about 1 semester of or the chemistry behind medications, so pharmacology. So it's always a good idea to go get your information from somebody that's had 4 to 6 years of pharmacology versus 1 semester. But BRIM Wellness is literally a wellness center, preventative health is what we're focusing on, and they're located inside of community pharmacies. Now you think, well, that's kind of, contradictive, right? You're trying to get people off of medications that are doing more harm than good, but it's still in a pharmacy. No, that pharmacists really do want, they're kind of the first line defense on medications. They would much rather or dispense a lot less medications to you. And so that's why BRIM is helping these pharmacies now get involved in screenings for preventative health. So we're now not only doing the well care checks, which, by the way, I don't know if any of our listeners has recently tried to schedule a well care visit just to go in for your annual well care, because that's covered. There's no copay for that. That's no out-of-pocket expense. You can go, almost every insurance covers that. You can go get your annual well care check. But if I call up my primary care provider today and I say I need an appointment, the front desk person is going to ask me, okay, what's the appointment for? Well, it's for my annual well care. Okay, Mr. Rice, we can fit you in March, March 15th. Will that work for you? I'm like, it's the middle of November. Why is it taking that long? They're literally backlogged between 4 and 6 months just to get a well care visit in. And the reason is there's a shortage. There's a shortage of primary care providers. Well, guess what? You don't wait around to get an appointment to go get a flu shot anymore. What do? You walk into your pharmacy. Pharmacy can give you a flu shot on the spot. Well, that's the same thing that BRIM is doing for well care visits and your annual screenings. Medicare, Medicaid wants to pay for osteoporosis screenings and diabetes screenings and heart health screenings. They want to pay for those, and it's no out-of-pocket expense to the patient, but it's hard to get them done because of the wait time. Yeah, Dr. Bob.
I'm surprised the pharmaceutical companies aren't interested in supporting the genetic testing, because there would be a lot less pushback from the population on the use of their pharmaceuticals if more people were getting more benefit. What do you think on that, Breck? I just thought of that.
I think it's a follow the money. I think that there's enough patients that are being prescribed and taking the medication that they're not getting the intended benefit from, that equals millions and millions of dollars, versus, all right, now let's actually get this medication to the 30% of the population that can actually metabolize it.
Mm. So who's advocating? Who are the best advocates, or who are pushing the testing out there? And I think in this context, pushing is a bad word. It's more as who's encouraging, who's educating the public on this to try to get the wider adoption. In addition to you.
It's mainly our pharmacists. It's our PharmDs that are doing MTMs, or medication treatment management, right? Actually sitting down with patients and looking at their medications. Because it's one thing for a doctor to look at that, because they always ask for your medication history, right? What other medications are you taking? But not everyone remembers every single medication, and they may go to a cardiologist, a primary care provider, a osteoporosis doctor. They may be going to 3 or 4 different medical providers, all prescribing different medications. So when the pharmacist can sit down with that patient and go through, and in fact, we'll tell them, bring all of your medications to the appointment. Let's sit down and let's go through all of these. And they're looking at which medication is interacting with us. We're also finding other really unique things too, right? Every patient that's on a statin, Dr. Bob, what should the patient be taking as a precautionary with a statin? CoQ10. CoQ10. Absolutely. You've got to be on a CoQ10 if you're on a statin, because
I'm trying to get everybody off the statins in general, because we've lowered the profile of the blood that keeps going down. The amount of cholesterol you have used to be 300, 260, 240. Now what are we, 160? I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, there's studies out there that a quarter teaspoon of cinnamon or a handful of Brazil nuts will lower your bad cholesterol better than any statin medication, right? But if you're on certain medications, they leach things from out of your body that you need to replenish. I was on a maintenance medication for a while, and you would think I would know better, but no one told me until finally somebody said, this is leaching, bone density. You're losing calcium taking this omeprazole, for reflux. It worked beautifully for me. Absolutely perfect for the reflux, but I didn't realize it was weakening my bones. And now I've got plate and screws and a washer to even put the malleolus back in place because I knocked that completely off, right? But yeah, so I knew that I needed to get off that medication and I needed to improve my bone health and get on good calcium. So almost every medication, right, has something that could potentially be leaching. Trying to remember the one steroid that prednisone. Oh my goodness, like 200 negative side effects from that one medication, but it's a life-saving drug. There are certain individuals that is what's saving their life. Well, you need to know what supplements you need to be taking on a regular basis to replenish what that particular medication is leaching out of your system. Even to be able to sleep at night, you need help because that steroid is bad for insomnia.
So I'm going to take you on a parallel. It might even be a tangent. We'll see. Because, we've had Armand Eckelbacher on a few times talking about smart supplementation. He's talked about genetic testing for that to say what's absorbable, what's available. I know you've spent some time with him. Are the tests the same, or are they two different tests for the medication versus the supplementation?
Yeah, two totally separate tests. So one is checking blood markers, and that's where we see deficiencies like mineral deficiencies and nutrient deficiencies. And one is checking the genetics of how we're going to absorb medications.
Right, but I think I'm trying to recall which one it was. So there was the blood markers, but you talk about, remember, Armand articulated, and for those joining us on here, I think we'll put in, if you go to Wellness Wave Club on YouTube, you can get the replays of Armand with us. One's on smart supplementation, the other one's on supplementation for longevity, and I know he'll mention it in there. But he mentioned himself saying that he had done some genetic testing where it showed for him particular, for this supplement, this was not the right supplement for him because it could not be absorbable for him.
Yep, yeah, that would be the same. That would be a pharmacogenomics test. That again, you'd only need to do that once. But the other blood marker tests, you do that multiple times, right? Because you want to show the improvement. So you get a baseline, you make recommendations, and then you come back in 6 to 8 weeks, which is another program of BRIM as well, where we can help people make sure they're on the right supplement.
And so along those lines of the pharmacogenetic testing, how do we know this has been effective? Have there been patients? Have there been studies where we looked at, you've taken this test, and their outcomes have been different than the others?
Yeah, so I guess the success story that hits home the most with me is one of my friends. It's a PharmD up in North Carolina. He specializes in geriatric pharmacogenomics and drug therapy or drug treatment management. Yeah, for our elderly population. He's the one that had the patient that was the walking zombie on 35 medications. Working with her multiple providers, they were able to eliminate a lot of those medications so that she actually wasn't just in a fog constantly. Now she's a little bit up there in her years. She's in her 80s, and so there are certain medications that he couldn't completely eliminate. He would have liked to have taken her down to maybe 4 or 5 medications, but they were able to get rid of the majority of the medications. So that's a success story. And we found that through the pharmacogenomics testing, showing the evidence to the provider that said, well, no, I really think she needs to be on this. Well, here's the testing that shows us that she's not getting any of the intended benefit from that particular medication.
Then how about dosage guidance? Has it been shown to help in tailoring the dosage? It's not only the medication, but the dosage for individuals.
Yeah, and even when you identify that a medication is in the green, right? Oh, this is one that works for that particular patient. That's where you still are needing to adjust dosing, and it comes back to the saying I always say on my TikToks, at the end, that if the side effects outweigh the benefits, it's time to do something different. Because even though that medication can be properly metabolized, it still has side effects. I don't know of a medication. Bob, do you know of a medication that doesn't have a side effect? They all have.
All you got to do is watch the TV ads, because there's a myriad of drugs. I mean, many, many dozens of drugs. And there's always the disclaimer while everybody's having a great time. There's always the disclaimer of all the things that can go wrong with the
Right.
pharmaceutical.
Yeah, so there is some adjustment to that, to even the dosing, right? And it's again having those conversations with the patient. How are you feeling? How
Yeah.
is this doing for you? Is it working out for you? Well, I think I'm getting some benefit, but but A, B, and C aren't working for me. Well, then you probably need to up the dose a little bit.
Somehow we got to get this covered by all insurance. This is so important. I mean, so many people are on prescription drugs, and this would help enormously. I mean, it's one of my favorite things in conventional care. Is actually, I don't consider, when things aren't covered by insurance, I don't call it conventional care. If we're paying for it out of pocket, then it's not conventional care to me. Conventional care is like insurance covered stuff. And I think all this should be covered by insurance, so everybody can go out there and get it. I mean, I don't get the whole idea that this is not covered. What's it going to take, Breck, to get it covered? What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's just keep pressure on on the from the payer side and the provider side, right? Asking for more of these tests to be done. So we're working with a major university medical school that has a big national lab, and we're getting that pricing down more and more and more. And I think that's part of where the payers will then see the benefit. Oh, if it's just a one-time test, they don't have to be retested, and you get it down to the same as a normal lab service, then I think the rest of your commercial payers will cover it. The Medicare Advantage plans are managed by the big carriers like United Healthcare and some of those other big carriers. So that's why the Medicare Advantage still isn't covering it, but your Medicare from the federal government, CMS, is covering it.
Interesting. So the Medicare Advantage plans don't cover it, huh?
No, they're still
Wow.
managed by those big carriers that are, waiting to, for the cost to come down even more.
So I would think that if I was a physician and my main tool is a pharmaceutical, I would have strong interest in making sure that this was covered somehow. And I would be writing letters and making phone calls and, hey, I need this for my patient. I would think that this is going to be in the hands of the physicians. And how do we
Yeah.
wake them up to get them to start pushing it like that?
Yeah, I think, I don't mean to be a pessimist because I'm usually a very, very positive person, but you follow the dollars, right? It's the big pharma has so much influence, and not just the pharmaceutical companies themselves, but think about all of the lobbying groups and all the special interest groups that are making bank supporting that industry.
Yeah.
So I mean, think about that for just a minute. You look at the ads. You just described one where they're singing and dancing and everything, and then the disclaimer is that this could cause cancer, death, or blindness.
The
But be
list is
thinking about it
long.
while you're going blind.
Yeah, the list is always long. The list of side effects is so
All right,
long.
there you two go winding each other up again. So let me unwind you a little bit, because Bob's question on that was, well, one, if and it tied into something that's going through my mind, is to really what's the level of physician belief at this point in time in the testing? How how wide what's the level of knowledge amongst them? Because you take that, you take it, for example, contrast that to something that all three of us use, PEMF. There's tons of research, tons of studies behind that. I've been working that for 7 years, but I still stuff coming from Columbia University. First got it approved by the FDA for it right now, but still, less than 10% of providers know about it.
Yeah.
So how many? And I was thinking, I've got a very good integrative doctor, and love her to death, but she's hopefully the life, not there. But she's never brought up testing when she's prescribed medication for me. She's following kind of standard approaches. And I know for one time I had a UTI, and she asked for a culture to figure out the right one to show if there's resistance, and got that. But she's never asked, said, Tim, you ought to have some genetic testing done. So I keep it on file for you. So net, what's your gauge on how many physicians know about it? What's their belief in it? And what do we do in that regard?
Yeah, I think we're just barely scratching the surface with our providers. Now, the providers that have a high population of Medicare patients may be more up to speed on this because it's covered in most cases. It's the providers aren't usually in the habit of telling patients that, hey, you just spent $120 to come, visit me, but now you need to spend another $350 or $500 because the 350 is a low price. They're usually much more than that. So $500 out of pocket to go get a genetic test. So if it really depends on their patient population. If they're high demographic of 65 and older, then they may be more up to speed on that because it in most cases is covered.
Okay. Because I to some extent I agree with you on, about the pharma companies may not have a vested interest in it, but a lot of physicians and having marketed a lot of regenerative solutions to physicians. One of the things, sometimes I used to go in there and talk about how they could make more money out of their practice. Many of them came back maybe would say, I'm not really focused on that. I'm focused on there. So many of them are poor business people. They said, I'm focused on outcomes. I'm focused on diagnosis and treatment. So they truly care for their patients. So I think if there's an education process on that more of them would indeed try to find a way to advocate for it.
But
yeah,
I think
you would think from the payer side, right? That they're the ones that are but the most patients have a copay on the medication that must be enough that the payers aren't, super behind it yet. But if it's 100% a cost to the insurance company, they're in business to make a profit. They want to not have more money going out the door than what's coming in. But yeah, you would think they would get behind that because it would make more sense to customize the medication approach so that the payers aren't paying for medications that are not even being metabolized.
Well, also, when health insurance companies have more healthy patients, they're paying out less money.
Yeah.
Right. So they'd have a strong incentive of, I think, of saying, hey, let's optimize the drugs for the patients so that, we can have patients that are more healthy and they require less of our dollars for servicing.
Yeah. Now, one of our studio audience members has a good comment here about Medicare rarely covering the comprehensive panels, but they're more looking at a specific medication or a narrow in their, per category. In a lot of cases, yes. We've had tremendous success in getting a comprehensive, but again, we're also dealing with patients that are on a high number of medications. So maybe that narrow science approach, we meet all of those categories that they're looking for, but we've had a very high level of acceptance for a comprehensive. But you're right, Kathy. There are a lot of times where for really inexpensive, $100, if it's out-of-pocket cost to specifically get a specific narrow category tested for, or one single panel.
Okay. And so as you look at that panel and the adoption, or in the lack of adoption or pushback so far, are there limitations to the test right now? Let me give you a sort of a leading comment on that. For example, I was talking with a company here just a couple of days ago, and they were more looking at the blood marker test results, where they said, look, they've done the hard work on looking at all their interactions there and collecting demographics for people by gender and by race and by ethnicity, and really looking at saying how these things differ across the realm. So that brought to mind, do you think the genetic testing today covers all that as well, or do you see some limitations in it?
Well, again, the DNA test is a one-time test,
right,
understanding the genetic makeup, where blood is showing, where people are with deficiencies or baseline.
Right. But let me give you an example, Lou. Do you think the genetic test, Bob knows something's coming his way as soon as I smile like that. Do you think the genetic test has captured genetic information on old UMass football players so they know that they genetically react this way versus
you're killing me, Tim. You're killing me.
And some Pac-10 wrestlers?
I That's beautiful, Tim. That's beautiful. That was so funny. I don't even know what the question was.
I think the question was, it was a statement. Pac-10 wrestlers got to be way more physically endurance stronger than anyone over in the East playing D1 football.
Right. So I guess I'll phrase it. That's pretty good, Bob. So I'll phrase it a little differently. It could be that Romanians have some, and so you were talking about genetic tests. It could be Romanians have something genetically different than Zulus in South Africa. Do you think the genetic pool that they've drawn from does it need to be, or if it does, is it vast enough to say, look, these particular things genetically in the Zulu population mean that they shouldn't be using these, and these things in the Romanian population said they should be using these things.
That's definitely a PhD question right there. That's for Dr. Bob.
I'm like, that's a good question. I was saying to myself, gee, Tim, that's a really good question.
It really is. And the only thing I can even point towards would be like the blue zones, right?
Right.
Why do people live longer in certain regions or certain areas than other parts of the world?
Right.
And there's a lot that goes into it. It's more than just their genetics, right? It has to do with elevation and purity of water and air and fewer processed foods, more natural diet, things coming
And there's
more from
probably community factors as well that feed into that, the whole behavioral business.
One of the blue zones is just a few miles outside of Los Angeles, California. Weird, right? One of the most populated, polluted areas in the world, but
Depends
yet
on
it's a community that is very healthy.
Yeah, so there's the community factors, but they also could be living on the good side of the mountains as opposed to
they are on the other side of the foothills. Yes.
Yeah, but that's okay. I understand. So I've got that, and then where that came from in my mind as I was mulling it over is, like you mentioned, I've had familiar genetic testing, and they took it one time, but they keep bringing up new results from it. So, for example, I looked at it 2 years ago. I wasn't showing any Ukrainian ancestry. when I went back and looked at it again, all of a sudden Ukrainian ancestry showed up there. So that's telling me that they're collecting more data, they're seeing more things, they're seeing that this profile and these whatever, I can't remember what they're called, alleles, whatever, are showing up in this population. So therefore, boom, boom, boom.
Yeah, true. So genetics for looking at chemical consumption and absorption is different than the genetics you're looking at for heritage, because you're right. The more information that we get, the more that we can see where our ancestry, fingers or roots, I guess, of the family tree are coming from. You're right. There are some populations like here in Arizona, the Native American population, right? Not a lot of evidence there until just recently. So there wasn't as much DNA testing that was being done with the natural inhabitants of the desert, Arizona desert. And now it's starting to come to light, and more genetic testing is happening. But it was purely because there just wasn't enough data yet.
Yeah. And I would think, for years, maybe, Bob, maybe if this has been corrected or not. For a while, they were saying there wasn't enough of even different gender testing enough in the pools on the drugs, as well as ethnicity portion of that. So hopefully this would, hopefully, as you say, they look at what the commonality is for really to being able to see the effectiveness. The testing should counterbalance some of that.
Yeah.
No comment. No further comment, Tim.
Well, I was going to say, while Dr. Bob's thinking about that, I want to thank everyone again who is following us live here on TikTok. Thank you so much for being a part of the show, live on Facebook, and those in our live studio audience here on Zoom. Thanks for being here. This has been a fun discussion, not because Dr. Bob knows about 3,000 times more about this topic than I do. I just happen to be around it on a day-to-day basis. So.
Yeah, I mean, really, Breck, let's acknowledge you for having your fingers on the pulse of this thing, because I don't have my fingers on the pulse of this. You do. Absolutely. You're in it every day, and you're a wealth of knowledge about it. So it's really great, and it's such an important topic. I mean, it's one of the more important topics that we've covered because it's so practical for our society. The number of people that are on, pharmaceuticals is huge.
Yep.
And so, and we're not doing the best we can do to help people like that. So, I mean, I don't take any pharmaceuticals. I've been very fortunate that I haven't had to do that, and I don't plan on it unless I have some kind of, life-threatening situation. Um, and yet there are many people that are on them, and we need to help them because they can have a much better life experience if they're taking the right medications at the right dosage. It's so important. I could go on and on, Breck, but I thank you for having your fingers on the pulse of this topic.
Yeah, and I'll acknowledge that, it's the testimonials of patients just saying they literally don't feel like they're in a fog any longer, right?
Yeah.
Because you are in a medication stupor or fog or not clear-minded. And so that's been the biggest reward to me, is to see patients get their life back.
Yeah, and I'm happy to see that there are a lot of physicians now their practice is based on reducing pharmaceuticals in the older population, because they know I mean, if I was a physician, that's where I would be, because that's, like you say, the satisfaction is there. Take people who are I've got a 99-year-old client who fortunately is not taking a lot of medications, and she's sharp. I mean, her mind is sharp. Her body's, kind of breaking down a little bit. I'm helping with that, but her mind is super sharp when it's wonderful.
Yeah. And so love those comments. And so if I can kind of position it, and Breck, I want you to correct me if I'm wrong here from what I've heard from you today. And so we've got pharmacogenetic testing out there. It's at a quality and level now that it works. It is changing lives. It's so help, like the fog you mentioned, it's helping get the effectiveness in being able to reduce the number of medications people are taking. It's actually affecting the dosages people are taking out there. We've got some barriers, some costs that's not affordable yet for everybody, but that's being worked on, and that you're really working to make it more accessible through the pharmacies that you're working, and you encourage everybody to work with their pharmacists in any regard on the medication interactions and effective medication management. Is did I hear you well today?
That's a beautiful recap, Tim. Perfect. And I think the first major benefit that we see from PGX or pharmacogenomics is safety, right? Looking at those drug-drug interactions and making sure that two unexpecting physicians wanting to do the right thing for that patient have prescribed different medications that could be, lethal when combined. And so, pharmacogenomics and just that consult with your pharmacist is so beneficial. That safety is the number one benefit from this.
And I'm so glad a lot of your focus has been on the value of the pharmacist, because that's so important too. Those people know more about drugs than just about anybody, including PhDs in pharmacology. They're in it all day, every day, and that there's such a resource of information. And physicians rely on two sources of information: the drug reps, which are repping a drug, which is, in my opinion anyway, not the ideal way to get educated, and the pharmacists. So the physicians can actually move people to the pharmacists and say, hey, go over there and get it checked out. So that's such an important pool that I think is not taken advantage of as much as we could. And hopefully in the very near future, it's going to expand dramatically.
And our pharmacists are way more open, right? They're accessible, where it's harder unless your neighbor is a doctor, and he's probably tired of you asking him questions all the time. You have some weird bump on your skin, right? But yeah, your pharmacist is accessible. You can walk into any of especially your independently owned community pharmacies. Those pharmacists care about their patients because it's their business. Not that you're not getting good service from a chain, but understand that's a staff pharmacist, not the owner operator. I highly recommend an independently owned pharmacy.
Yeah, sure. And Breck, I don't know if you know this or not, but how many community pharmacies are in the country? Do you know that number?
Yeah, a lot less now than there has been in the past. We're the first time in the history of community pharmacy that we've actually dropped below the 20,000 mark for what would be considered a independent or a small chain, right? So we're about 18,000 now that fall into that category. 65,000 pharmacies overall, but that's counting your hospital, internal pharmacies, your closed door pharmacies, your long-term care pharmacies, but retail pharmacies that are community pharmacies or independently owned, about 18,000.
Do you know how many are big chain pharmacies outside of the healthcare system, like
Yeah, well,
CVS and
your two big
Walgreens?
chains that are left. So Rite Aid's still pretty big, but they have their issues. So it's mainly CVS and Walgreens, right? And they each have about 10,000 locations each. So there's 20,000 just with those big chains. The next biggest group is your grocery stores. Grocery stores
Ah,
all have pharmacies in them too. So your Kroger is a huge chain, Albertsons, Safeway. They're in the process of possibly merging, so that'll probably be the next biggest chain out there of pharmacies.
do you think that the work that you're doing within the next 5 years could cause a dramatic expansion of community pharmacies because of the fact that they'll be providing so much benefit? What do you think?
That great question, Dr. Bob, and I love that question. That is the overall goal. The overall goal here is that we create these little health hubs in communities where patients can go. They were already going there, but the pharmacy wasn't really getting the benefit from it. But you go to any rural, go to Nebraska to some little country pharmacy. I bet you they've seen it all. They've seen a rancher come in with a dislocated, finger and said, "Hey, can you help me with this?" They've probably seen cuts and bruises and they've gotten, standard first aid, but they were just doing it out of the kindness of their heart. Well, with BRIM, we can actually do those clinical services, help those little communities become a community hub. Again, the focus not being on urgent care, the focus is on well care, on preventative, trying to help us be a more healthy population. That's why I absolutely love all the work that Senator Kennedy, Bobby Kennedy, is doing on processed foods and
Yeah.
vaccine mandates. And not that I'm anything against, our Western medicine, but we could do a better job of putting good things into our body rather than whatever is popular and tastes good. And now there's evidence that those big manufacturers are actually putting things into processed food to make us addicted to them. So can't just eat one. You can't,
That's right.
once you pop, you can't stop. Not to
Oh, yeah.
mention
They
anything.
always did that. That was the salt, the sugar, the high
Yeah.
fructose corn syrup. So
Yeah. Well, Breck, that's why I just love your project, and I wish you the best of success in it. We need it. We need it. It's so valuable, and it's going to be a big deal. Everybody's going to know the name of Breck Rice soon enough.
Now they don't need to know me. They just need to know BRIM. Go to BRIM, and any community pharmacy. The BRIM is really the intel inside. It'll really be that community pharmacies like Optimal Wellness is the one in Riverside or Irvine. Olive Tree is the one in out by San Antonio. So they're going to have their own name, but powered by BRIM.
Yeah. So Tim, that Breck is getting modest on us again. That's what he's doing.
Yes, yes, yeah.
Anyway, it's just great, Breck. So thanks what you do. Thanks for all you do, really.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. And I'm glad we covered this topic. I hope it's been useful to everybody listening live. And thank you so much for joining us. We'll definitely put in the show notes. Probably, I would invite everybody to join the Facebook group, Healthcare Disruptors WellWaveNOW. So that's a great group where it's patients and practitioners all coming together. And so if you want to contact me directly, if you have any more questions, that's the best way to reach me. Just join that group and we can correspond in there.
All right, thank you. Thank you, everybody, for coming and join us. Hope you come back next week. We're going to do our second in our Wellness Hero series next week with a person named Haleh Hussein, who just has made a beautiful comeback in life from multiple devastating things, both physical trauma and abuse, as well as from thyroid problems. And so how she's balanced that to thrive and how she goes about that and maintains that, I think, can be a lesson for all of us.
Incredible story. I'm looking forward to it. Thanks, Tim, and Dr. Bob. It's great to be with you.
Great to be with you guys. Take care, everybody.